Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Digital Futures Education Podcast. I'm here with Natalie Piero. Natalie is a Spanish translator specializing in education, an ESL teacher. No, Natalie is also a language access consultant. Thank you for joining us, Natalie.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
It's good to have you back. But I'm excited. I want to give you some time to do this because this is actually the part I've been kind of the most excited about because I know you did some great research. So Natalia and I have talked about, and if I say it incorrectly, just correct me, the Conectar Igualdade in Argentina. Now, were there other countries involved with the Conectar Igualdade across Latin America?
This program, the inspiration comes from the one per student from
Yes.
actually from the MIT Media Lab from Massachusetts. So
Okay.
the inspiration comes from that
Okay.
you probably know. So
I do.
Actually,
I'm sorry. No. Go ahead.
And the country that implemented it was actually Uruguay, which is right next to us.
Mm-hmm.
A country right next to Argentina. We are the only two countries that speak Rio Platense Spanish from the River Plate. So we speak very similar Spanish. Side note. So they implemented first. I believe it was called Plan Ceibal with a C, Ceibal. And then was Argentina's turn. So they got their inspiration from the American program, from the MIT Media Lab, that I did some research there. Some criticism. I don't know if it worked or not. The idea was to make a inexpensive device that didn't depend on software. So it's something that was completely open. Open source, that's what you call it?
What year is this? This is around 2010.
So 2010, that's when Argentina implemented it. After looking at Uruguay and testing it with a few computers, they started, and it got a lot of praise and award criticism because of the software. So because they were using maybe proprietary software. So they created their own software based on Linux.
Okay, like an open source Linux software.
Yeah, so that students wouldn't they to give them the freedom to know that it's the major ones that we know that are available, and also because this was an equity program. It wasn't a commercial thing. It was just for equity.
So it was actually Uruguay first. Wow. And they were netbooks. Is it true they were netbooks? Like they were like small
netbooks.
They were like one 1 gigabyte netbooks. And there was some was Linux software, proprietary Linux software, and that was used so that there was like no kind of corporate kind of involvement with the software that was being used.
Yeah.
Oh, interesting.
Yes, and also it was all sold to the government. I mean, you buy them if it weren't a government program. You could buy them if you want. But most of it was assembled in Argentina, which was a good thing. They were not importing it. So millions of computers were given out. I believe 5 million to students. The problem was at the beginning that maybe there wasn't internet access everywhere, but these computers were, you can use them. There's some use without the internet. I mean, you can do things. And the idea was that computer literacy was what once was literacy, learning to read and write. Now most people can read and write, but the new literacy is digital literacy. Like you need to know how to use a computer. So, areas or people, low families that can't afford a computer, they can have one with this program, which is good in my opinion. What do you think?
It was good, and
not knowing a computer in this day and age, it shouldn't be a privilege. That's why they wanted to make it a right. I don't know if they were able to, they want to make it a right so that different governments cannot just remove the program, and it's a right to have
Okay.
access
Like the
to
technology as a
this
right. Yeah.
device
And
as a
yeah,
right. I don't know if they.
and the research that I read, one interesting piece of research was just the influence of the program, how when adding that one device to any home shifted, and I think everyone's probably experienced this on some level when maybe you first got your phone and then you had a laptop or maybe an additional device, especially if you have kids. Like you, as soon as, if a kid wants to use one of your devices, as soon as an additional device is made accessible, it shifts like how everybody uses devices in the home. And one piece
Mhm.
of research I read really dug into that with the program in terms of how now that there was this additional device, the perception of the value of the device towards the education and also the knowledge from just, oh, I have my phone, I could do these types of activities now with this additional device. So, these other, because there was so many homes that either had a device and this was adding an additional device, which changes a lot of dynamics. And then there were lots of homes that didn't have a device at all, and now this was their first device.
Mhm.
Um, and that
Yeah.
was kind of very interesting research, just how by adding a device, an extra device, to homes shifted how perceptions of people's value of technology. Um, but it's interesting, the whole part of it is a right. So you were saying, so it started around 2010. It was a program. Were there any like drivers that you know
Yeah.
of, like like when it first started that kind of made um, like kind of kicked it off, like that were kind of going on politically or anything around that time of 2010? Like now you were saying like it was based on a program from MIT, their innovation lab, which is
Mhm.
a pretty cool place. Um, I'm assuming it was just kind of part of that whole drive at the time. There was a lot of schools were starting to go to more one-to-one technology, and they determined that this would be a really good solution to try to scale the technology across the country, but at the same time make it a right, like a digital right, and at the same time, you know, basically it became like a big research project in some ways. Um, in terms of seeing who has connectivity and what the device could do um, going forward. I mean, it's a great idea, but it doesn't, to be honest, some parts of it don't seem that well thought out. It's like, we're going to give everyone this and it can do this and this. And that's a great idea, but it's also a very expensive idea for something to do at that kind of scale, to not know if it's going
Yeah.
to be successful. Um, you
I
know,
don't know how much research they did before,
yeah.
because I'm checking now. Uruguay was in 2007, I think. So they didn't have a lot of information as to how it was
Yeah,
working there. Also, we have much bigger countries, so controlling so many devices. We have a big country, and I know they put together teams for the administrative thing, the technological thing, and the pedagogical aspects of, because it's, I
that's
mean,
right.
it's not just throwing like algae ice and just, I mean, do something with it. Or well, teachers, I mean, you need to train teachers and also parents,
Right.
right? Because as you said,
I
sometimes there are families that never had a device before, or maybe they have
I
a,
re- I
actually,
read
Argentina, we have
yeah.
a lot of phones per person. Among the five, we are top five in Usernet.
Hmm.
So for other purposes, what about
Right.
using device for educational purposes?
Right.
That's a different thing.
And I read a little bit of research around the teams that were training the teachers, and um, it was interesting. Like it, I mean, at the end of the day, I'm guessing it just having it happen expanded the understanding of the value of technology on some level. Um, but it either, I remember with those teacher teams, they ultimately came back with a lot of the feedback of like, it was hard to shift a lot of the educators, use of the tools. And once the students knew that the educators weren't shifting as much as maybe they knew around the use of the tools, the students were then taking advantage of the situation. Like, okay, I'm going to game on my device until the teacher who's supposed to be teaching with the technology gets around to using the technology efficiently enough in class. So there was
Yeah.
some research on that. So, so 2010, and then you were saying in 2015 it changed its name.
Well, it changed because of the change of administration,
Mm-hmm.
completely different. It was a 180 shift. So they changed the name, Aprender Conectados, which was more. The other one was Conectar Igualdad. Is Conectar Igualdad would be translated back to connecting equality, equity, yeah, something like that, like connecting with equity or something.
Okay.
So they were more focused the equity, like everyone should device. Everyone is entitled to a device, right? That was the focus. Then they shifted because it's completely different political to aprender conectar, which is back translated learn connected. Like let's learn like connected, which is the focus is on learning, right? The quality of learning, so much as like everybody having access, but let's focus it on learning with technology, like digital learning program, a
Mm-hmm.
digital learning program, more like shifting a bit.
Shifting the
And the
pedagogy.
change they did, well, yeah, and it was they were not giving now lab netbooks, but they were now, and they stayed at the school. So it was a different, like, well, they can only be used as school because it's a school device. So
Gotcha.
yeah, and they spend as much money. There was some
Mm-hmm.
criticism, and well, obviously, and then 4 years later, when the government changed again, so they just killed that one, and they came back with Conectar Igualdad,
So
back to the
do you?
beginning. And now with the new government
Yeah.
just looking into it to see if there's there were actual results. It's very,
Right.
very expensive, as you said, program. So is it worth it? I mean, and it has something changed? Has education changed or whatever? So they are going to look into the program now. I
So
don't know if
you've been
it's,
teaching you've been teaching this whole time. What's your opinion? Has it
but I
changed?
didn't. But this is just a program for public schools, and in
Mm-hmm.
um, Argentina, it's not all public school. We have a big percentage of private schools,
Mm-hmm.
and I have always taught at private schools. I've never taught
Okay.
at a public school.
So
So
have you
now my
seen
daughter,
have you seen any
yeah,
have you seen change with students though at all? Like even just in passing, like even if they weren't your students, like if you're walking through the city or you're seeing students working in different spaces, like have you personally experienced or recognized like more use of technology, more adaptability of people,
well,
or
naturally, but
awareness of like, yeah, sorry.
personally not. But I am not the best to ask. Maybe
Mm-hmm.
because I've never really seen it in you or talked to teachers. So maybe
Mm-hmm.
talking to someone in public education, because
Mm-hmm.
in private families usually have devices, so they may don't need help from the government. So we're already using, and well, 20 with the pandemic and everything, everybody needed devices, multiple devices at home,
Mm-hmm.
and I guess this was helpful for people who couldn't afford them to have
Yeah, it's
access to education.
and
But
definitely they
we
had
might
done
need to
it before.
in public sector
Okay, that'd be good. Yeah,
to see,
let's do that.
that'd be good.
Yeah.
I can, yeah, and now my attends public schools, and I can definitely see if I can talk to
Yeah, if you
someone
want to
to give me
rope
their.
someone in, yeah, that'd be interesting. Definitely someone who, especially maybe even someone from who's been in since last 10 or 15 years, because I would imagine it'd be interesting
The
to hear.
principal.
Uh,
How about the principal?
sure,
The school
sure,
principal.
I'd
I
love
have a
to.
great relationship with her.
Yeah, yeah, because to me
Yeah,
it's very interesting because
she's about to retire, so
yeah, that would be interesting.
it
And
would
to
be
be
nice to
honest, in the United,
tell a story.
yeah, and especially even the knowledge before,
Mhm.
what are the items before.
Yeah.
And to be honest, like 2010, even in the United States, we didn't have a lot of one-to-one programs. Like we were just at the beginning stages. I mean, there were a lot of iPad districts, maybe like schools that had adopted the iPad um, as a device, and maybe not even all the way through. Maybe certain grade levels or school levels. And the iPad at that time was the dominant device. And the reason why the iPad was the device was they hadn't made. Well, the iPad was considered the most flexible device for apps and resources and ease of taking back and forth to and from school. Um, and then we slowly saw this adaptation to laptops, but they had to be smaller laptops like the netbooks that you're all talking about, and those netbooks
Uh-huh.
are obviously with 1 gig of RAM, much more. They're cheaper than an iPad for the processing power. And then that's when Google has essentially gotten involved in the development of the Chromebook. Since then, has
Chromebook.
greatly
Mhm.
decreased the cost of the technology. Because those netbooks were great, but the processing power got really slow quickly between
Mm.
2010 and 2014. Where then the Chromebook became kind of much more easier and more sustainable. Um, so it's just interesting because it did start at a time when the iPad, at least in the United States, we weren't really as committed to one-to-one programs as we are now. Um, but they did start around 2008, 9, 10, and then it shifted to fully by
Mhm.
2012, 13, everyone was on Chromebooks. And then by 14, 15, 16, many more districts went to Chromebooks. And then now we're very strong in Chromebooks. But it was really the Chromebook that
Okay.
drove the ability to do it at scale because of the cost, and so
Because
it's
of
just interesting. It's just very,
and
very,
those Chromebooks. I have a question. Do those
yeah.
Chromebooks stay at the schools? Are students take them home? What is the
So there's a lot of different
it's
models.
has one? Ah, okay.
Yeah. So the ones I'm familiar with, a lot of different models. So usually at the K through like 3, 4 level, we have them stay at the school. A lot of schools do that.
Mhm.
Um, I actually kind of encourage teachers to try to. I'm kind of I feel like a little bit of a stickler for the digital education sometimes, where like, as much as I'd love them to stay at school, like I also want teachers, especially at the grades between like 9, 10, 11, when students are age 9, 10, or 11, that they get homework that they actually have to do on the device, which gets them to take the device home. Um,
Mhm.
I like to do that, like encourage the device to go home at those age levels. And I'm okay with the device potentially being damaged because I want teachers to feel like they can assign work and stay adaptable to assigning work to students at home on the Chromebook. So to basically take that learning home is really important. So as a
Mhm.
digital learning director, like that's something like once, I want teachers to feel like they can adapt their learning at that age level. At the middle school level, that grades, basically ages, 12, 13 through 14. Yes, they have to take them home. That's when that's when a lot of damage starts to happen, which we start to run into problems with, that age of student who tends to kind of get themselves into trouble with the devices. Um, but that's also when they really develop a lot of skills too. Their writing skills evolve, their digital literacy skills evolve. They become really adaptable with the use of technology, and then all the way then they keep taking their Chromebooks home. So when they get into high school, they're very used to having the device. The teachers can feel
Yeah.
like they can assign anything. They're basically preparing for college at that point when they're going to need a device all the time anyways. So they're very fluid at that time by the time they get to high school. Plus, as you were talking about with standardized testing in the United States, having them have the device allows us to do standardized testing with those devices too. So that the ability to have the technology
Oh,
to put into place the standardized testing is a big advantage. And when you commit to
yeah.
doing devices and having them take them home all the way through those grade levels, you're also able to commit to providing good insurance programs and also good repair options. When you're fully committed,
There.
you can really put those things into place and not have to worry about, all right, how are we going to be sustainable now. That's kind of the question I would have for a principal too. So maybe we get the, like, how have they seen the sustainability of the program? Because that's a big window of time,
Yeah.
that 2010 to 24. And I would imagine there's definitely been some lulls and challenges. And with the amount of infrastructure too, like with kids not having connectivity at home, um, if something can't be assigned or be assigned consistently, that's an issue. And actually, that was something that when the pandemic hit in the United States, that became a big topic was student ability to connect at home. And T-Mobile actually, you know, a lot of companies are trying to get into the market, and T-Mobile was
Uh,
trying to get into the market through
yeah.
hotspots, for connectivity at home.
Yeah.
But no, thanks for doing that research on that. That's
It was really
definitely
interesting.
good insight. I'm gonna share a couple things real quick that I kind of found kind of interesting as I kind of did some research on this topic, and I've been poking around on this topic for a little while, and I was probably doing like a little bit too much research based. Um, when I was kind of digging into it before, so this was a good opportunity to kind of dig back. Um, and I'll just share some of the resources that I found. I just want to make sure I go into the right order. So this was the first one that I kind of came across. The reason why I grabbed this one and wanted to just at least mention talking about this one was, um, this one was about, um, this was from 2011, and it was from this Connected Learning Alliance site, um, and it was about a conference. This writer went to a conference in Buenos Aires, El Congreso Internacional
Hmm.
de Inclusión Educativa, um, digital inclusion education, and they were talking about the Conectar Igualdad. Um,
Yeah.
and this writer had a chance to do a tour of the school. And I was just kind of shocked by the devices themselves. Like I saw here, this is the first time I had probably seen the devices that were provided. And this article's older; it's 2011, and these are definitely like they, manage smaller devices, small screen size. Um,
Yeah.
like I could definitely see the challenges, but at that time, this was like an amazing feat to actually get them into the hands. Program is sponsored. President Ministry of opening panel for the conference included Argentina's Prime Minister of Education, as well as the officials from the Conectar Igualdad program. The panelists were convinced that the future of schooling in Argentina must include one-to-one computing model. Connecting all young Argentines to the internet has become a national priority, and the goal by 2012 is to
Yeah.
distribute 2 million more. Um, so he went to a Buenos Aires municipality and said that the schools were strikingly
Yeah.
similar to the United States. Um, and he says, when I asked the director how she hoped the Conectar Igualdad would impact her school, she did not hesitate. Speaking through a translator, she explained that the availability of the netbooks and the chance to gain at least some basic computer literacy, the use of spreadsheets, word processing would convince some students to continue their education. In fact, many of the students persuaded their parents to attend their school precisely because the network books would be available. Promised to give each student who
Uh-huh.
finished school a netbook. So I thought that was kind of just interesting to have that perspective. I think that's great. Yeah, you need to expose. It's like science, technology, engineering, math, like STEM areas, just exposing kids. So I think that's true. The challenges here: teacher support and development, education, cultural capital, and
Yeah.
social inequality, of course, and
Mhm. Mhm.
transforming schooling literacy in edge communities. So, Argentina is one country among many in South America mobilizing a renewed commitment to educating young people. While their notion of digital literacy must certainly evolve, it is refreshing to see countries. Now that's totally that's a little bit of an American spin there that I don't necessarily think was needed. Like this notion of digital literacy must evolve. So he's kind of missing the point, to be honest with you. Like he had the point up here. The point is what the director said. This is the most important part. The point is the exposure. Like you cannot talk to literacy without having exposure in place. I would say, I would just kind of call the author out on that a little bit. That I would just be honest. Like it's like to to me, like that's part of you can't have literacy without access. So this article back from this date, you need to have access. So from that simple place, from the director speaking, of course people's understanding and concept of literacy is going to grow, and but it grows with access, and it grows with the ability to start somewhere entirely. So let me see what else we have here. So this is the recovery one. So this was an interesting one. This is about, I saw this kind of cited in a couple places. Um, this was about the musical artist. I saw this as
Oh,
kind of an interesting
oh,
little
yeah.
spin. In Argentina, cheap government issued
Yeah.
netbooks sparked a musical renaissance. Working class teens turned junked machines into musical instruments. And so, do you want to talk a little bit about this one?
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
mean, you probably know better.
Yeah.
Mateo
So
Matias.
yeah. So there, yeah, there are a few artists that um, uh, uh, learned to make music using that computer, and now they are very big. Well, they're from it says from La Boca, like parts like slums, historic slums, they say. So
Yep.
maybe they couldn't access computer. So in a way, that's a success story, right? Because maybe think about educational purposes. You may not think someone becoming an artist, but well, it's a career. So they did learn music,
That's
how
right.
to compose music and write music. So it is education and it's art. Well, you are so maybe it's not something that we were thinking other careers, but this is a career too. Uh, and also, I believe this success story encouraged other kids to
Right.
like use the computer for something like this, right?
Understand the
So
technology, right?
uh,
I'll
understand the
insert
technology. It's
my
like I'm using it.
I'll insert my
really
Boca mug at the correct time.
oh,
Um,
yay! I'm a Boca fan. Yay!
there you go. So,
Yay!
and that's
Good.
the yeah, and like one thing as you were speaking about influencing the other students and kids is he was 12. He turned his netbook into a makeshift studio, and he became the star that millions
Yeah.
today know as Trueno, Latin
Bueno.
American rap. And
Yeah.
they say it wasn't a one-off. He launched his music career the same way by recording lyrics on his netbook. And in 2014, Red Bull chose his netbook recorded video, and his career took off. 7 years later,
Yeah.
he had 6 million followers, while his videos hit more than 48 million views in less than 6 months. Argentina's culture ministry even features him as an emblem of the country's cultural production. And he's only 19.
Mhm.
And and I like the note here is like he repurposed it. So it was an old machine, I believe, at the time. So this was
Mhm.
probably the original machine that he may have gotten when he was like maybe even like 9. And so I think he took the older netbook, which had 1 gig, and he used it to help him record. Um, so
When
I
people need something, they are resourceful.
right.
And that's amazing because the resourcefulness. I mean, you can't learn it anywhere. It sounds like you are motivated to like do something. I need things that I have. There's another. There's the elegante too that he also became. He's extremely famous now, but I
Mm-hmm.
believe he started making music during the pandemic. He became a hit, and
Mm-hmm.
he said that he started with that computer. He has a whole studio and everything, but
And that's the
I
power of
believe
the
it's
access, right?
the power of this, right? Maybe they wouldn't have been able to achieve success without it. It doesn't mean it. This doesn't mean that there's only success because I am sure they are not. Uh, like really horrible, not so good stories of these devices,
Oh,
but well, there are.
no, but
Uh,
the
this
first
is
thing I did was install Audacity. So it's
fantastic.
yeah they